Hello everyone, my name is Portia Halbert. I'm an environmental scientist with California State Parks in the Santa Cruz area. The video you're about to watch today is a training session for those people who work in the old growth parks of the Santa Cruz Mountains, Big Basin, Butano, Portola, including county parks, Memorial, Pescadero, and San McDonald. Please keep an open mind. We're going to be telling you a lot of new information, and we need your help, as does the endangered marbled murrelet.
I know some of you have traveled great distance, and I appreciate that. We appreciate that. And hopefully you'll take away from this meeting today a lot of good, useful information. We have several presenters here today, and I'd like to introduce some of them to you. Alex Taccone, Ranger Big Basin. Alex? Standing next to him is Rachel Arias. She's the maintenance chief for the Santa Cruz Mountains. The person that spent countless evenings, days, and nights putting this together, Portia. Chris Spohr, he's going to help out. He's our resource ecologist, or it's like resource scientist, environmental scientist, whatever you're saying. Susan Blake, where'd you go?
Oh, she went to go get something for the presentation.
All right. Elizabeth Hammock, since you spoke up, our district interpretive specialist, will be helping out today. What I'd like you to do is take a moment. I'd like you to look to your right, look to your left, and look behind you, and introduce yourself to the person around you. This is going to be important for me today.
Don't wait there. Hello, Lord.
So this is where it becomes like herding cats. All right. I've done this stuff for a few years. All right. Today it's going to be both informative, interactive, and there'll be time for your questions. So please feel free, feel comfortable. This is where we exchange good information and we get our questions answered. So why are we here other than you were asked to be here? First and foremost, we're all here representing state parks in one form or another. We have a mission we follow. I won't ask you to recite it, although I'm sure some of you can. But within that, we talk about protecting our natural, our unique, and our extraordinary natural and cultural resources. We're going to be talking about our natural resource, in particular the marbled murrelet today, and why that's important to us. Hopefully you'll take away from this today a new awareness and understanding of what's important. Because at the end of the day, what I want you to recognize is we're all in this together. You know, over the years when these things come up, quite often what happens is somebody thinks that it's somebody else's job or it's somebody else's responsibility. And really each one and every one of us, volunteer, paid staff, visitor, everyone is responsible for the success of this. Hello, Sheila. So, how did we get here today? If you remember last May, we had a very successful passing of our general plan for Big Basin State Park. Out of that came a lawsuit. Somewhat not surprising. And I've spent the better part of the last 9-10 months working with lawyers and other folks to try to come up with what we thought was a best settlement for all of us, including the resource. And we've done that. I'm happy to report to you today that it's because of the success of what we've done in the past, our life is much easier today and going forward because of that. So I want to thank everybody ahead of time. We've done a lot of good to date. This is going to be about putting that polish on and making sure that what we have going forward is just a little bit better, and then our ability as individuals to cast and spread that word of why it's important to everyone involved, new employees, volunteers, and visitors alike, why that's important. And we'll get into some of the specifics later. You know, what's at risk? I wanted to leave you with what I was presented with at first. Out of the gate was, we need to get all the people and all the businesses out of the historic core at Big Basin. That's where we started from. What would Big Basin be like without people? How many of you ever spent the night in a redwood campground? It'd be hard to find that experience at Big Basin if we would have been unsuccessful. So, as I said, where we started from to where we are today, we've come a long ways, and that's mainly because of the hard work that we've had and have done in the past. And now it's about putting that polish on. So, with that in mind, I would like to say that what's at risk is another lawsuit, but I think we can do better than that. And how we move forward is, I'll just leave it with you again. We're in this together. I want to integrate all of the functions. It's not a ranger issue, it's not a maintenance issue, it's not a volunteer issue, it's not a resource issue, it's our issue, our volunteers, our employees, and our visitors. Together we're going to make this work, and I'm confident we will. Because I won't settle for the alternative. That's all there is to it. All right, I'm going to pass it off to, who's next?
I am.
Portia.
Thanks, Jed. All right, hi everybody. My name is Portia. I've met most of you, but there's quite a few new, unfamiliar faces. So please come say hi and let me know if you have any questions. I'm going to be talking about the natural history of the marbled murrelet. First order of business. There's a sign-in sheet going around. Make sure everybody signs it. We want to keep track of everybody who's coming. All right. I'm going to tell you a little bit about I'm going to give you some facts, some fun information about this bird that is pretty awesome. There's a lot of different adjectives that we use to describe the marbled murrelet. Mysterious, interesting, amazing, cool, different. It's definitely a different little seabird. So I'm also going to tell you a little bit about the corvid management that we've done and mention some of this conditioned taste aversion some of you might have heard about. Now, a quick show of hands. Who's heard of the marbled murrelet before? Okay, now before this training, before you guys heard about the training, how many people had heard about the bird? Okay, we got about the same number of hands. Excellent. That was slightly premature. The call later, you'll get to hear the sound of the marbled murrelet. All right, so my story begins in, hopefully this works.
Can we turn a light on?
Yeah, that'll be okay? Nope. No? That won't be good?
Okay, good.
All right, so my story begins in the winter of 1973 when there was a snowstorm in Big Basin. We have these trees that aren't accustomed to bear the weight of the snow, and we had a lot of broken branches. So the following summer, in 1974, we hired a tree trimmer, tree sturgeon, a forester. He goes by a lot of different names. We hired him to climb a lot of our trees and do a bunch of branch trimming. So while he was up there, he saw something he's never seen before. He saw this thing. As a tree climber who had climbed hundreds and hundreds of trees, this is the first time he'd ever seen this bird. He prodded it gently with the tip of his saw, and it fought back at him. It backed away, and he noticed it had webbed feet. He thought, this is really strange. And he thought, I'm going to take this bird down. I'm going to collect this bird. So he throws his jacket over it, and it backs out from underneath his jacket, and it tumbles and it falls, hitting a few branches on the way, but it falls 150 feet to the forest floor, where luckily it was unharmed, or appeared to be unharmed. Turns out that this story might have been forgotten had a ranger not been coming in to check his mail on his day off when he heard about this bird that was found with the webbed feet. It might have just gone to a wildlife rehab center and nobody would have talked about it, but it rang a bell for him, and he remembered having heard about this mystery of where the marbled murrelet nested. And it became quite a sensation. Lots of effort and research and study has gone into looking at this bird. So it turns out that 200 years, people have been looking for the nesting location of this bird. It's a member of the auk family. You guys have all heard of puffins and murres. All right, so unlike those birds, it's quite a bit smaller. It's about the size of what we call a baked potato. I had my crew pick up a for me this morning. About this size, about 6 to 9 inches long. All right, so most other members of this family, in fact, most seabirds nest on islands and rocky cliffs located right next to the shore. Now, the 200 years started in 1776 when Captain Cook had his third voyage of discovery, where he sailed around the world and collected specimens of this bird, which are still in museums back in Europe. It's a little disingenuous to think, or to say that that was the first discovery of this bird, because of course the Native American people knew all about the marbled murrelet. And when, at the turn of the century, one of the first researchers who studied this bird in depth, he asked the Native Americans where it nested, and they said, in hollow trees high up in the mountains. And of course, we called it a mystery until we found this first nest. So, the marbled murrelet's small, and I like this slide because it illustrates the fact that it's the size of a robin. It is a small bird out there on the ocean. It has these webbed feet. And in the summertime, it has this breeding plumage where it gets its name, this color that's quite marbled. Here it is in flight. This slide illustrates the change. These are museum specimen skins, and you can see the change in color from the wintertime plumage of light below and dark above to summertime where it's quite marbled and brown. So they're a seabird. What do they eat? Fish. They eat fish, exactly. You can kind of make out here, I like this shot, especially because you can see the tentacles of the squid that it's caught here. They especially like rockfish, and if there's a good rockfish year, there's generally a good year for marbled murrelet. All right, they're distributed around the Pacific Rim. However, our species is distributed from Point Conception in Central California all the way up through Alaska. Now, they don't breed down here, but they're occasionally found in the southern south of us. But the southernmost breeding location is here in the Santa Cruz Mountains, right where we are. All right. Should be coming up. All right. They need old growth. They need old growth forest in order to breed. They need these large limbs. You can make out what we call platforms right here, because it turns out that they don't actually make a nest. They definitely nest. They basically nestle down in the moss, the leaf litter, and end up just laying an egg on the branch. So that branch needs to be big enough. The smallest branch they've ever found a murrelet nest on was about 10 centimeters. I've got a puppet here for illustrative purposes. Can I get a volunteer? Chet, come on up. All right, so this is a larger than a robin-sized bird, in order so I could get my hand into it. But Chet, this bird wants to sit on your hand. Would that be all right with you? Okay. All right. So, amazingly enough, this robin-sized bird lays an egg.
You're not going to lay one of them.
Yes, I am. It is an egg the size of a chicken egg. All right. So it puts a lot of energy into this very large egg for such a small bird. All right. Thank you. That was. All right. So. The egg is light blue, it's speckled brown, and you can see here this murrelet pair has found a nice shallow depression in this large branch. Here's another nest. This right here, I've lost my pointer. You can make out this white pattern is a fecal ring. So this is where a marbled murrelet would have been. Chick would have been raised to adulthood, hopefully. Right, another bird on a nest. So what's happening with these birds? What's the big deal anyways? Well, this was the historic distribution of old-growth forests in California, in coastal California. And I want you to watch what happens here. What we've had is a loss of 95% of the habitat for these birds to nest in, with little pockets remaining here up until Humboldt, where we have a more sizable population of murrelets, because we've got a lot more places for them to breed. Around the turn of the century, most of the forests were cut down here in California. This is a shot from around the turn of the century. So in addition to suffering loss of 95% of their breeding habitat, they also have to deal with conditions in the ocean and the fact that we've been competing with these birds for a lot of their food source, not to mention pollution and overall changes in ocean conditions. All right, the remaining old growth is largely locked up in state parks, state and county parks in the Santa Cruz Mountains. And I've circled, this is Big Basin, Butte Knoll, Portola, Pescadero Creek, and I believe Memorial County Park is part of this complex as well. But I've circled in red the areas of the highest density of old growth. And it turns out that most of that is in an area where we have our facilities, our campgrounds. The places that people want to go are those old growth forests. All right, a lot of the work that I've done has been funded by oil spills. This is an oiled marbled murrelet. I've worked on 3 oil spills over the past 14 years, the Command, the Luckenbach, and the Costco Busan. More than 52,000 birds were considered to have been killed by these oil spills. And we didn't receive all of that 26 million. We got about 3 million of that in order to do mostly restoration activities. All right, so during this time, because of all the things that the murrelet has to deal with, from the loss of its nesting grounds to the conditions in the ocean, we've had this happen with surveys we've done for marbled murrelets. So it looks like, around 80 here in the early 90s, we would see during a survey morning. And around 2002, we started to see that number flatline, basically bottomed out. And we're still seeing them. They're still using our parks, but just not anywhere close to the historic numbers that were there in the past. So as a result of this, in the early 90s, the bird was listed as endangered, federally endangered in California and threatened in Washington and Oregon. So there's not much we can do about conditions in the ocean. Our purview is located within the parks where we work. Now, one of the things that we do have control over is the number of corvids we have in the... Does anyone know what a corvid is? Okay, corvid is a name for the general class of birds that include ravens, crows, jays, magpies. And these are extremely intelligent birds. And over the past 40, 50 years, these birds have been increasing in number. So this is the number of birds counted during a Crispus bird count, where groups of people